Okay.
Hello, everyone. This is Amanda, and I'm the principal of the Genomic Kitchen. And I want you to meet a long-term friend and colleague, Dr. Mary Jo Fishburn. And we are actually going to talk today about Truth Compass. And the reason I want to talk about this is because we're going to build this phenomenal experience into our packages. And we'll also talk about how you're offering Truth Compass for your own medical practice too, Mary Jo. But we figured we could write about this. I said, why don't we just talk about it? So those of you who are actually saying, well, what's Truth Compass? You can hear us talk about it and say, oh gosh, that makes absolute sense for my life. So, right, Mary Jo? So we're gonna head in with that. So, okay, perfect. And your practice is in Towson, Baltimore, Maryland, right?
Yeah. That's right. I've been in practice for 21 years in my location in private practice. Yeah. So I have a functional medicine integrated practice, mostly focused on musculoskeletal wellness. I have a specialty board certification in physical medicine and rehab, as well as functional medicine. You know, a variety of other things, but
amazing combination.
Yeah, it's been great. It makes a huge difference when you're looking at chronic pain.
Yeah.
Looking at function in general, to be able to look at nutritional aspects of things and be able to step back and look at the big picture and the root issues. What are the triggers that cause the health issues that people have? And address those, we have a much more powerful and effective strategy for making a difference for people.
Yeah, no kidding, especially from the functional aspect. But that actually leads us to Truth Compass, because you also have brought into your practice, or it's been there for a while, I think, this idea or this concept of energy medicine. So can you talk about that?
Sure. I actually, Truth Compass is actually a kind of a separate practice, if you would. Certainly there's an overlap with my other practice, with my clinical practice. But basically, I'm insurance-based, so that is the reason for that. I would have a difficult time documenting, well, maybe I could squeak it, but it doesn't feel right to charge insurance companies for energy medicine. Although acupuncture is energy medicine, and I'm certified in acupuncture, and I provide that as well.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, up until 1998, 97, acupuncture was considered experimental by the AMA. So it's really only a recent phenomena that we actually recognize it as a legitimate mainstream option for people.
Well, you know, it's interesting you say that, because you probably read the book. The author has since passed away a few years back. It was called Molecules of Emotion. Candace Pert. So those of you listening, it was a brilliant book, and she was brilliant. It's very, you have to read her book to hear her story, but just an amazing researcher. And I think she was one of the individuals that probably really put this connection between molecules and emotion together. You know, that how you feel emotionally can impact your health. And
exactly, and if you look at, you know, I look pretty solid, but if you look at each cell, we're really molecular. We're a bag of molecular soup, if you would. The cell is constructed of, you know, phospholipid membranes, and there's a lot of activity that's happening that is all biochemical, all relating to molecular structure and function. It uses the energy contained in chemical bonds to do the work that it needs to do, the ATP that we all talk about. But it's really kind of fascinating when you think about how a human being is really a community of cells. And we start with a sperm and an ovum, and it differentiates into this amazing complexity.
Incredible.
But all these cells have to work together in order to survive. And it's a collaborative mission. And generally, there's a lot of redundancy in the essential functions, but when you get out of whack, when you get totally off kilter because of a variety of events, either you just didn't have great genes to begin with, and so you don't have the substrates, the basic structures you need, or you aren't eating correctly, you're not getting the nourishment that provides the substrates you need, or trauma or emotional effects that create. If you have chronic stress, that has a big impact on this community of cells, on how the cells communicate with each other.
Exactly. And so I'm going to kind of jump to how we work together and then come back to this idea of, why would we look at Truth Compass as something we want to build into an opportunity for any individual that's working with us. So the way Mary Jo or Dr. Fishburn and I connect is through DNA testing and analysis. So what I actually do is assess your DNA. We create a blueprint, and from that we're able to see from a biochemical perspective where we might want to do some nips and tucks. We can see where, as you say, our cells and our systems are working efficiently, and where there's potentially some inefficiency. And when you get your biochemistry out of whack, it's like a wheel. I like to say it's like a wheel out of round, and that's when you start to not feel great. You have those aches and pains, or might manifest in a number of different ways. But one of the things that I see, and that I talk to you a lot about, from what I'm seeing in the DNA, is where there's kind of a collision course with in the brain, if you will, is in terms of how it's expressed through things like anxiety and depression. People suddenly feel like they have no energy, or they never felt anxiety before, or they're absolutely disinterested, lost all kind of oomph for life. And I can kind of see it biochemically. I say, we might want to take a look at this. Maybe it's nutritionally derived, and sometimes it is, but so we can kind of quote correct and adapt. What happens if that doesn't set the balance? And that leads to this area that you work in so beautifully, which is looking at the impact of emotions and life experience, which could manifest as stress, but it's this sort of other area, right, that can impact our biochemistry. That's what I want to talk about, and why it's important to unpack that.
Okay. I think that to step back a little bit and just talk a little bit about when we're talking about assessing the DNA, we're actually looking at where the actual term we use is genomics.
Yes.
We're interested in how our DNA is influenced. Like our cells, we used to think the DNA was the brain of the cell, but we've come to appreciate that the DNA is actually a blueprint for the cell's needs as they show up. The cell sends a signal to the DNA that unveils certain segments based on an as-needed basis. Mm-hmm. So it actually provides structural or enzymatic or molecular pieces that the cells need in order to function. And there's the cells, when we're talking about genomics, we're talking about how the DNA responds to the environment. And that means what's going on in terms of cellular health. And the cell is dealing with what's going on internally, but it's also responding to what's happening externally.
Exactly.
And that, it's all these molecules that are interplaying. And we have these broad, on an individual cell level, we have markers that identify a cell as the lung or the kidney or a red blood cell or whatever. And it then is allowed to do certain things within the body. And we also have molecules that are generated in various places that are more systemic, more broadly spread. and will tell the whole community of cells what's needed. So those big groups of molecules are our hormones, our neurotransmitters, and our inflammatory molecules. So our immune system's dealing with defending itself against invaders and repairing itself. Our hormones are dealing with the cycle of life, being prepared to deal with what's needed, procreation, digestion, a variety of functions. And our neurotransmitters have to do with the electrical system of the brain, of the nervous system. And we know that our emotions have very characteristic neurotransmitter characteristics. Or, you know, that, for example, dopamine is usually released as a reward. It tends to be associated with addiction. We know serotonin has a big role in depression. We know that GABA is a neurotransmitter that is very calming, and a deficit of that tends to be associated with anxiety, as well as high levels of norepinephrine or epinephrine.
So you're constantly like, you can
right,
feel
up and right.
Yes.
And we need to be able to respond moment to moment to things that might be threatening to us. But then we also have a basic, our personality, our lifestyle, or whatever. We have a baseline kind of what should we say, set point, or kind of a home base of where we are with our all those with that balance, that soup that we have. So when we're looking at genomics, we're looking at all the factors that can play a role with that molecular balance. You know, we need to be able to respond appropriately, and when the threat is done, be able to relax and move on. And there are various aspects of our nervous system that will, you know, we have, you know, checks and balances. And when we're looking at our genomics, we're looking at where are there challenges to the normal recovery mechanisms.
Exactly.
And what you do so beautifully is look at, well, let's just say that our DNA, if there was an issue, a gene that was critical for life, without which we wouldn't be able to survive, then it's going to be duplicated in several places in the genome, and it's going to have different versions of it, so that if one goes bad, we still have backups. And what you're doing is you're looking at the variety of genes that are associated with different biochemical pathways.
Exactly.
And pulling it all together, and there's a story that comes up in terms of, you know, oh, you're somebody who has an issue with lipid metabolism, and you're going to have cardiovascular issues. You're somebody who needs extra vitamin D, and that's why you're so inflamed all the time, and whatever. And what's beautiful about our collaboration in terms of the genomic to table, I call it genomic to table, you call it Genomic Kitchen, is that we can really validate the individual's experience, because the DNA really support, you know, how we're interpreting it really kind of echoes with that person's personal experience, and then come up with some very pragmatic strategies. So where I come in terms of Truth Compass, I have a role in terms of my clinical practice, and that's more the general things, and we can talk about that at another time. But Truth Compass is looking at the emotional milieu, where's your home base? Are you conflicted about some fundamental aspect of your life? Are your relationships really a problem? Have you been tormented about food or nutrition? I had one woman who's tell me that her mother died, and she had a stepmother who gave her constant enemas as a result. When she would eat, she would end up, it's like she had this whole weird thing about making sure that the GI tract kept going, and it had to do with food. So people can have really bizarre life experiences, or they can be super stressed about some aspect of their life, their job, their whatever, and it influences this molecular soup.
Yeah, that's the connection right there. And it's an element that too often is not explored. In fact, most often is not explored, particularly within the context of working with your doctor, within the context of a clinical practice.
Well, nutrition in general often is ignored, but
yeah, well, we're changing that.
And genomics is fairly new, but what I'm interested in is more of the energetics of this, and really your relationship to nourishment. And what we can do with Truth Compass is come up with is to basically look at the energetic field that an individual has, and where there are blockages or conflicts, often there's a story. And what the information that I get in a session kind of helps unveil the story and allow choice, allow freedom to make changes based on how you feel about it. It's all voluntary, but most of us want to feel better.
Exactly, and it's interesting. You gave we talked about nutrition here, and you gave the example of one client whose stepmother gave her animus. What I'm seeing is quite a few clients who are struggling with their health, and as part of the conversation, we definitely have seen that they've struggled with a relationship with somebody all their life. And it's not necessarily their spouse or their sibling. It could have been a parent who's passed away. And that has never been resolved. And yet that we can correct everything on paper with biochemistry, but we still have to correct that. And correct is probably, we still have to offer the opportunity to explore some of those conflicts.
Yeah, I would call that healing. It's like
Healing,
whatever, to find peace about it, to get some resolution about it. If it's a stored, a lot of these issues are unconscious, but when they're identified, there's like, oh, I recognize that. That definitely is true. So it's a gentle, pretty powerful tool for discovery and options for real change.
So take us through what a Truth Compass experience is, because you're doing this remotely mostly,
Yeah.
And that's
it's totally fine remotely, and I can do it by phone or Zoom. I mean,
yeah, I did it by phone.
Most people have their eyes closed.
Yes.
We can record it if you want, but basically, if there is, to me, this is a spiritual endeavor. It's really what we do is we intentionally set the stage so that the individual who's receiving the session connects with their higher self and grounds. It tends to be a very peaceful, kind of validating experience in terms of just being more in present moment. And then as that connection between who you are outside of this lifetime and who you are in this lifetime begins to flow, the story of different aspects of things will become more apparent to me. It comes as images or knowing, or I'm using intuition. And since the focus in this venue is really on nourishment, we're asking, what are the things that are, what is your relationship to nourishment, and how can we heal wherever the problem is? And I've had really interesting experiences with this focused question. In one woman's case, who has extreme chronic autoimmune issues, a lot of weight issues, diabetes, a variety of things, I was taken back to an ancestor of hers and the origin of this profound dysfunction associated with her nourishment. And and we came up with a strategy, or we talked about where that came from in terms of her lineage, in terms of her genome.
Interesting.
And that was a really fascinating experience. I've had people talk about, one woman had, I could see her in their kitchen as a 5-year-old with her mother, and her mother wasn't interacting with her anymore. And it turns out that her mother decided to go back to work at that point. And that everyone tells her that her personality changed radically at that point. And I didn't know that. It was just something that came up. It's like I could see her mother and her as a little girl interacting, and mom's not responding anymore. So, and how that's influenced her relationship to food and nourishment.
That's really interesting. So I'm wondering, as I'm listening to you talk, and we have so many different examples. So people who have unresolved gut issues, for example, that are not responding, obviously, to treatment. I mean, it's always a long process, but I would imagine that's very interesting too, to put that in the mix, because there's definitely that gut-brain connection. But I wonder if you see that, if you've had clients
I just saw somebody yesterday or 2 days ago, who has had chronic diarrhea, tendency to have regurg when she, she says, I vomit into my mouth.
Oh
when
my
she
God.
brushes her teeth in the morning.
Wow.
And significant weight issues. And she's been on furlough for 7 weeks. And all those symptoms went away. All of them went away. I mean, she also, with us, we did a little bit of dietary change, but this week she went back to work, and don't you know, she doesn't have diarrhea yet, but now she's vomiting into her mouth again.
There's a connection there.
It's a clear connection, and she could see that as well. And it turns out, while she loves what she does, she hates her boss. She hates the company that she's working for.
Were you able to kind of read that through Truth Compass? Were you able to identify that for her?
Well, in that case, in that situation, it just became, I do incorporate a lot of the counseling and the coaching into my clinical practice. Right. And it's surprising how often a question out of the blue that doesn't seem related to anything will come up to me, and I'll ask the question, and it's the thing that needs to happen.
The fountain, right? It's
the issue that's really in the room. So you do get some of that in my clinical practice.
Yeah.
But in terms of Truth Compass, the focus is on that, is on healing it. And, a lot of times it's, what we just need is to bring something into our awareness. You can't change anything unless you know it's there.
So basically, Truth Compass creates an awareness, because you're literally reading what's coming to you, and you don't even know who you're talking to, right? It's just, you don't need to know this person.
No.
At all. It's like you're a blank, as I like to say, a blank sheet of paper, which you're not, because you're a human being, but that's how you're seeing it. And you're just, through that connection with whoever's on the other end of the phone, you're letting things come to you. I don't know how that happens, but it's a skill. But I know, having gone through it with you, that you're right on. Like, I was never, well, how did you know that? But it's absolutely, you were able to say this, or let me ask you that, or this is what I'm seeing. And so when somebody's open to this, you're going to see things or interpret things or ask things without judgment that come up, right? That's the experience.
Well, I think, you know, in a typical Truth Compass session, I'm not really asking for people to ask a specific question, although sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
When we're talking about the genomic to table piece, we're focusing on nourishment, and that there is a distinction between nutrition and nourishment. So nutrition is what you take in your mouth. Nourishment is what your body accepts, what it is able to draw into itself to renew itself. And on an energetic level, that's what's happening all the time. It should be. In a healthy person, that's what should be happening. And the less, you know, there are a lot of people, it's always astonishing to me, who really aren't in their bodies. They've kind of dissociated from their bodies. They're caught up with other things. They're, you know, either they've had a lot of trauma, which can do it, or they're so caught up in just trying to think ahead, or caught up in the past, or whatever. And so it's really about, in this moment, these are the things that are showing up. And we're constantly processing things. We're influenced by our past experiences. They shape the way we interpret the experiences that are here. Mm-hmm. And if we're having recurrent patterns of experiences, there's something we need to learn about that. There's something that is really, you're gonna keep having those same repeat experiences. That's what you said. Until you discover the pattern, what's behind that. We're not gonna respond strongly to anything that we don't have some kind of issue with. You know, people can tell you all kinds of things, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you can be sympathetic, but I didn't, you know, it doesn't trigger any conflict or like clutch in you. And yet something can happen and throw you off, and you don't even know what it was. And now you're in a fight or flight state, or your anxiety's up, and it's affecting your ability to sleep. It affects your immune system, all of it. And it's purely because you have had you've had some unresolved conflict or belief about yourself or the situation that is creating this distress.
And the way it manifests, like you said, it can be very overt, like through stress, but it can manifest through dysbiosis, autoimmune diseases, or migraines, chronic pain, maybe fibromyalgia. I mean, it's just kind of third dimension. It's so cool, that offers insights in ways that you on your own may not be able to uncover. That's really this beautiful.
Right. Well, when I first started exploring energy medicine, and I took a course on chakras, I had a really interesting experience with a woman who came in, and she was in her 40s, and she talked about her irritable bowel. And it was kind of the timing of it was odd. And I said, well, that's kind of an odd time to develop irritable bowel. What was going on? She said, oh, my husband, he was just working on my gut. Like, there's a literal statement that she, you know, was clear. And, you know, like she hadn't realized it, but he was working on my gut. I'll never forget that. I was like, oh my God, here's somebody who's concretely manifesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah. But
go ahead.
Yeah, so it is fascinating. The gut has its own nervous system. It's very sensitive to our state of arousal, of stress. You know, we all know that, you know, you can have butterflies in your stomach when you're just
you have that gut feeling.
Yeah, or the gut feeling. Yep.
So what we're looking at doing with Truth Compass through the Genomic Kitchen. And then let's talk about it through your practice, obviously. And the Truth Compass is a service that you offer. But what we're doing at the Genomic Kitchen is we're looking at building Truth Compass into one of the packages we have called Restore. And this is usually for individuals who really have untold numbers of unresolved health issues. And, they felt like they've had the runaround and they cannot get to resolution. And so we actually build a DNA genomic testing. So it's my work, DNA testing, this functional nutrition application, but then offer Truth Compass as this sort of third dimension to help you look at maybe the origins, what the etiology is of what has been happening with you. Because as I said right at the beginning, we can look functionally at how your cells, cellular health and how you're operating literally. But sometimes I feel like that's only two-dimensional. But the third dimension is, okay, what's the environment in which these health digressions, health issues, or nourishment issues have transpired? And I think that's where this is so profound. Would you agree? I mean,
I think it can be a big help.
Yeah.
And I think it can be a help for anybody who's struggling with, why they're here, or recurrent patterns of issues that are really disturbing to them, or
right.
Just to optimize, to get some clarity about their mission, their soul mission, if you would.
Yeah.
But nourishment and, I think that this is a really wonderful way to explore, to take this just another step, to go to the extra distance in terms of, again, root. That's what we're about in terms of functional medicine is what's the root of these issues.
Exactly.
And the DNA gives you, it's a platform, that's for sure.
Yeah.
If you're somebody who has serious, like a methylation issue, that's going to affect your mental health. Absolutely. And your nervous system, a variety of things. So there's a lot of information that can be really retrieved from the genomic data. But right. In terms of dealing with, getting some quality of life, I think exactly. This is what we're talking about.
No, exactly. And you kind of brought up something that, we were at the Genomic Kitchen looking at our Restore package, which we just talked about, but the other one we're working on is called a midlife checkup. And this really is for, it can be for men or women, but what's coming to mind is women, but not exclusively. And a lot of times, I think you and I talked about this, Mary Jo, that sometimes, women, we're maybe 45, 55, the kids have flown the nest, and you suddenly realize, I'm not doing what I want to do anymore. Or I want to change careers, or maybe I've never been happy, or maybe I'm lost, or maybe I want to know what my destiny is because I don't feel that I'm on the right path. I've always felt like one leg is shorter than the other. And Truth Compass is an interesting, and we want to build Truth Compass into this because we feel it's a wonderful way to kind of offer insights into or give perspective or feedback. I mean, how would you position that? When we describe somebody in midlife who's like, okay, I'm ready for something else, but I want.
Yeah, we're really switching. We're shifting our identity. I mean, it's a big deal time, and some people sail through it beautifully, and other people really struggle. And I would say that most of us have some challenges with it.
There's the physical, physiological.
Yeah, we're aging, or we're changing our where we are in our life and so forth. Yeah,
and I think Truth Compass isn't like reading a tarot. It's like you're just hearing someone talk to you about you, and gives you this kind of maybe some aha moments, some points to reflect on. That's why we wanted to build that in there. So it's nourishment may come up, but that's actually not the focus. It's more of a sort of broader insights maybe an opening, an opportunity to kind of look at yourself as you're being, as you're listening. I mean, that was what I had kind of did. I didn't say, hey, can I have a midlife reset? But because I've known you for so long, but I wanted to experience Truth Compass. And I have to say, I mean, it was right on. I just sat there for 45 minutes as you just talked to me and said, this is what I'm seeing. And you talked about my childhood and et cetera, and how I was feeling emotionally right now. I'm like, and like you said, there's no questions. It was just you talking to me. It's really interesting.
Well, I guess the question I would have for you is, how did it make you feel afterwards? Was it meaningful?
It was validating, of who I am. I mean, I didn't run away and say, oh my God, does she know that? Or, but it was validating that how I was feeling was very true. It validating, empowering, and by validating, I say for me, some of you are going to listen to this 2 years from now and say, but when did they record this? Well, we're in May 2020, so we're kind of still going through the COVID pandemic, and you had said, I sense there's like some anger around you, but not physical anger. It was this unseating, unbalancing, of just sort of not being happy about some of the decisions being made. And I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. So by validating, it's like, hey, I see that is, bothering you, and you were absolutely right on that. So, and that was okay. So, because if I wanted to come back and unpack that with you, I could.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. The intention is this is an unconditionally loving process.
It is very good.
It's totally about placing you in the light of regard of all possibility and humanity. We're works in progress. Mm-hmm. And so it's about understanding a little bit more what's going on in this moment that may be influencing the way I feel or my thoughts about my future, or
exactly,
any of those things. So that's the intention, is to heal whatever no longer serves, and that makes room for what does.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And to have somebody kind of look at that or see that for you, because we can't often see outside of ourselves, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's like you can't see, you can see what's in front of you, but you can't see what's behind you in time or around you. It's very, very interesting. So Truth Compass, so pretty much, it's 60 minutes of this really beautiful session, and it's not done on camera, it's on your phone or however it's set up, and then there's an opportunity to have a short follow-up with you. Is that right?
Well, the way we've set it up for the Genomic Kitchen protocol and my Genomic to Table protocol is there's a session and then a short follow-up, just to see if there are any questions and or maybe a little bit more of a session. So the idea is one major session and then a follow-up. And then if you want to explore further, that's easily arranged. You would just arrange that directly with me.
Yeah. And you know what? What's amazing is here is a really busy MD saying, I want to offer this as another dimension for you to explore your health. It's an amazing opportunity, everyone. I'm glad you're my friend, Mary Jo. It's like, I said, I can't imagine moving forward and not offering this as an option for people. Now, if somebody wanted to explore Truth Compass outside of the Genomic Kitchen and Genomic to Table, which are programs you and I both work on, which have the foundation is looking at your DNA as a blueprint, they can do that, right? They can.
Yeah, I have a website. The website is intuitivetruthcompass.com. And my email address is MJ for Mary Jo Fishburn, Fishburn at 4, the number 4 at gmail.com. So if anybody listening to this is interested in finding out more, my website has a lot of background information on it. I do add blogs periodically, and I'm happy to also have a conversation.
I mean, that's amazing. So just to sort of end here, because we're talking about energy medicine and this dimension, do you see this field growing as becoming an important part of health and medical practice moving forward?
I think energy medicine in general is. There are a lot of people coming out of the woodwork doing different things, and you know, there's Reiki, there's craniosacral therapy. Yeah. There's a variety of different forms of energy work that's out there. Yeah. Some of them more over, you know, more less, more like oriented to the nervous system, but it's all about reestablishing smooth and even flow through the energetic matrix of our body.
Right, and go ahead.
So this one, the style that I'm doing is really geared, and I do other forms of energy medicine, but I really love this one because I've always been interested in the whys of what motivates people, you know, and I've also always believed that we're here for a mission. We've kind of signed a contract when we came into this lifetime to do something. And the question is, what are we supposed to be doing?
And that's the reason, and I'm going to come back to energy medicine and make a point, which just came to me as you were talking, but that is the reason I wanted to personally offer Truth Compass, is exactly that. We all came here for a reason. And it may not be clear to us. And that's why I'm saying in midlife, sometimes we've been so busy. You go through college, if you have the opportunity to go to college, and then you your career, then you've got your kids, then you have to pay for them to go to college. And you sit there and say, well, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? And I think Truth Compass allows that inquiry, you know, not that you have to be lost, but maybe it'll provide a little bit of explanation, a little bit of direction for you to contemplate on. I think that's wonderful. That's why I said we can't do midlife checkup without this, for people who want to do it, you know, and say, oh, and offer that perspective. But I think the other thing that I wanted to bring up with Truth Compass is, whereas Reiki and craniosacral therapy are they're energetic medicine, it's physical, it involves physical touch, and this doesn't.
Again, right. I mean, you know, it turns out you can energetically influence people from a distance, and that includes Reiki as well. So, you know, yeah, but you know, again, it's all about intention. That's where you place your attention with intention. That makes a difference. And the intention associated with Truth Compass is to help you be more authentically you, to heal whatever obstacles or resistance, to learn from the life experiences that we've had, and to discover what that teaches us on a soul level, so that at the end of our lifetime, we feel like we've really lived well.
Yeah, imagine that. Imagine the opportunity to explore that wherever you are in life, and say, yeah, when I close the door, check. It was a good life. That's a fantastic gift to offer people. So, wow. Are we ever lucky to have you?
Thank you.
All right, everyone, you know where to find us now. And I hope many, many of you take advantage of this incredibly gifted doctor and the opportunity to add this richness to your life through this insight. Thank you, Mary Jo.
Thank you. I look forward to talking to any of you. Bye-bye.